Good evening, everybody. Welcome again.
Hi, Cash. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing? Hey, Dr. Krista.
Bonjour, hey Kashyap, how are you?
Good, good. How's your cat doing?
There's
They,
two.
sorry, they.
Fabulous.
Amazing.
I'm fortunate. I'm in California right now, so I'm actually not with them, unfortunately. But
Oh, cool.
She
yeah,
she came out
Realize.
here so that she could see my dog, who is clearly superior to either one of her cats.
that's what dog owners delude themselves with. We'll leave it
We,
at
we, we needed another hour for that webinar.
Yes, we do.
that.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. Behind the scenes, DNA company is what you just experienced. We are going to dive into something really cool today. And we're happy and giggly and smiling because this is the outcome of a lot of work. And it's exactly what you needed and asked for, and we've got it now. And so Tracy's here, I'm here, Chris is here, and we're going to share with you what we did. There's been a lot of announcements lately, and there's been a lot of changes at the company, as some of you know, where we're trying to take all the tech knowledge, insights we and have it eventually support this healthcare system that's so broken, which means we have to integrate ourselves, that you can't replace it. Yesterday, Tracy and I were on a call, or maybe it was the day before, where we were talking about Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, and Jamie Dimon got together, trying to change the healthcare system, and they failed. If those three guys can't do it, we're gonna find a different path, and our path is to integrate, which means, as opposed to disrupting, we know this system and how institutional it is. We know the rules. Why don't we try and bring the solutions that are needed within the framework of those rules? So what we did, we know that there's a need to screen and there's a need to know where you're at. We know that some of the work we do with genetics, the DNA 360, is more foundational, and a lot of you that are here today have already done that. You've screened yourself, you understand, here's my DNA that's never going to change. Then questions come up like, well, what blood work should I do? Oh, this cardiovascular area is alarming. What protein should I look at? What marker should I look at? What doctor do I go to? And so we understood that we got you started and we got your eyes open towards a different way to think about your body and your health, but that maintenance, that marker, that stamp in time that tells us you're doing a good job, that was missing. And we also understood that the second half of personalization, your genome is half number one, the other half is your gut. These two things, when combined, that's a fulsome view of personalized health. And so, having said this, we've spoken about the gut test, we've spoken about the epigenetic test. There's another layer to the story, and when adding that layer, we now have what we believe is the future of annual screening. It's not, let's look at blood work that only points to, here's your cholesterol level. Now, here's a medication that might bring your cholesterol level down, but I still have no idea why you have inflammation driving a high cholesterol level. That's where we're at today with annual screenings and biomarkers that are disease centric, as opposed to root cause centric, functional in nature. So if we can drive and look at the functional insights that point to inflammation, immunity, and metabolic dysfunction, as opposed to the diseases that come out of those things, we can stay far ahead of the diseases themselves. And this has always been our mission. We started with the DNA testing to give you insights into what your biology is saying. We now have a stack of additional tests that are reoccurring that can give you that peace of mind on an annual, biannual, or even quarterly basis, depending how much you want to check where you are today, so that you know there's nothing to worry about. And these amazing ladies you see here today have been behind the scenes working on this. CEO Tracy Wood, Dr. Krista, who leads the clinical team and the science and research. So we're going to talk a little about these tests. I'll just open it up by telling you that we believe by understanding your gut, which you check regularly because your gut microbiome will change and it will point to red flags where you need to take action. Your epigenome, how is your genome expressing and where are you at today, which again points to immune function, metabolic function, methylation, these markers that speak to, again, markers in time that could potentially point a red flag out. And the third additional layer, which was missing for some time, and Tracy has been working on, Dr. Chris has been vetting, and we now have, how do we look for the big C, cancer? This is the thing that comes out of nowhere, especially today. You're seeing the data showing 25-year-olds, 35-year-olds, 40-year-olds, unheard of before, these new cancers that are hitting young people. How do we stay ahead? So we learned a method that allows us the earliest possible detection that we could find to know early, which is the best way to deal with cancer, that there's something to be concerned about. So now that these three have been put together, we believe we can now reinvent the annual screen to make it far more functional and sort of actionable in nature. There's something that points to now go do this, as opposed to here's what your disease is called, go fill this prescription.
Right.
You know, we want to deal with health a different way. So having said all that, some of you have already heard about the epigenome test. Some of you already heard about the gut test. Dr. Krista, tell us about this cancer screening test.
So it's a privilege to talk about this. So what Kashif is referring to is what we call the liquid B, which stands for liquid biopsy. So many people have heard of a biopsy in the sense where cancer is suspected. We'll quite literally go in and take a tissue sample, a biopsy, and we will then study that for cancerous cells, right? That's the true and the traditional path towards diagnosis. What this is doing is a step before, and I'll be very clear, this is not confirmatory or diagnostic of cancer. It is meant to be a screening tool, a tool that will not only warn of a potential emergence of cancer, but also should there be cancer and there's tracking afterwards, what does that inactive disease look like? Is there risk of recurrence? Which is something neat, which is something we don't really have a great grasp on right now. So what the liquid biopsy is, it's a beautiful, simple blood test. We take a little bit of blood and we then submit that to laboratory analysis. We're looking effectively for all the DNA contained within that blood. All right. And some of that DNA, really, we're just looking for patterns, right? Once you translate all of that DNA, you're essentially just translating it into code. We match that code against known cancer coding. We match that code against known cancer DNA. Okay. And what we're then you'll receive is going to be a report that says we have seen, or maybe not, again, let's look on the fortunate side, maybe we'll see nothing, but it's going to say within your blood, we've seen these DNA fragments and we know these fragments are associated with this sort of cancer. And here is the load. Okay, here is the load, meaning we only saw maybe 1 or 2 strands, and maybe cancer comes up in the body every day. The body does a spectacular job of quashing that. The concern is when you start to see a greater and greater burden, when you're seeing more and more of these fragments, because it's evidence that there's something that the body, the immune system, is not able to manage. So this is a really neat test insofar as, first, it's able to detect things before we know to biopsy, before there's enough cells to even biopsy per se. But separately, it's something that can be used to track over time, which is largely what we don't have right now, short of, going in and doing some of those imaging investigations. It's a very, very neat and powerful tool that we're introducing here. And we're really excited to work for it because it will help both in the screening and the monitoring after the fact, which is very powerful. Yeah.
If I can just add to that real quick, one of the things that happens, especially in America, is if you go to the doctor and you say, hey, I want to get my annual mammogram, which now we do every 2 years instead of every year. And the doctor says, well, you just had one a year ago, so you don't need it. Yeah. Liquid biopsy. In fact, this actually hit the national news today. There was a celebrity, a young gal in her 30s, that had a mammogram and it came back fine. And a month or 2 months later, her doctor, her OB-GYN, for whatever reason, ordered a liquid biopsy, a cancer blood panel. Yeah. And found that there were cells that weren't there just a few months before. And it literally allowed this gal, and again, she was a celebrity, right? So she doesn't have challenges with insurance like a lot of people, amen, right? Because this is very good for her. But she was able to go back and then have additional imaging done because she had a valid document that said, you need to approve this through my insurance. We know something is here. We just don't know where it is. And they went looking for it. And sure enough, they found it. And had they have made her wait the statutory period for testing, which is 2 years now for women, she would have had easily stage 4 breast cancer and she would not have been able to recover. So it's things like this, Kashif, that you and I have spent well over the last year talking about this. Precision medicine comes from taking somebody at their core genetics, like what we do with the 360, and then expanding on that through different ideologies and testing, right? We call it practicing medicine because nobody's gotten it down right? But at least now we've got some tools that are easier to get through, easier to have access to. I mean, trying to get an MRI done in the American healthcare system, regardless of what you have, you're waiting months for that sort of thing. Well, if you think you are unwell or you think there's a problem, those months feel like forever. And that dis-ease that sits in the body from all of that stress and all of the other challenges that you have as a result of that can drive really a very different outcome. So I just thought it was very interesting that this gal's story, I think it was on, I don't know, it was one of the morning shows. They like go on forever. But it was on one of the morning shows this morning. And this gal, she was able to benefit by a testing like this. A lot of people asked, does insurance cover this? Well, the answer is no, they don't yet. They will eventually. But, you know, it took almost 10 years for PGX to be a thing to be covered. And PGX literally reduces death in patients from medical mistakes. So I don't know how long it'll take to get something like this covered, but for now, it's, you know, it's a cash pay to play.
Yeah. I know that I've seen hundreds, if not thousands of cases, and Kashif, I'm sure you can testify to this as well, where you see a female who comes in and they have a family history of breast cancer and they have genes that predispose them to estrogen toxicity. And there's valid intangible reasons, this family history, genes that predispose towards. They're young, they're freaking out, but to Tracy's kind of call out here, they don't really have recourse through conventional screening. And so this, if nothing else, is that peace of mind that can be done once a year and be that space to know that you're doing all you truly can outside of preventative action.
Yeah, and I can tell you, of the people that I hands-on coach that I work with, whether through programs or VIP type people, whatever, anyone that's stuck in a disease state, I haven't met anyone that doesn't have a sort of fight or flight trauma type thing going on in their mind, right? Which prevents, it's very binary. Your body's either healing and recovering or you're in fight or flight. There's nothing in the middle. And when you're in fight or flight, you literally can't recover and heal. And so this fear and this thing that triggers the thought triggering the brain being told, your thoughts are telling your brain what to do, right? And your brain is not understanding what's real and what's not real. And so to exactly what Krista said, you know, not knowing and being stuck in worry, which so many women are because of all of what's going on. 50% of Americans are expected to get cancer, right? 50%, that's the number now. Same thing in Canada.
Yeah.
So, all right, you know, so, and that worry in itself prevents the body from recovering and healing. So that peace of mind, which we just didn't know how to get until now. And the really cool thing is that what we found is what we already do using the genome. We're just using a genome of something else. So we went back to keep simplicity, right? And here's what we're good at. We are good at applying genetic interpretation. We're just doing that somewhere else now. We're sequencing and learning the DNA of something else that's not supposed to be in your body, right?
Yeah.
And understanding what's going on, just like we're sequencing, you know, the gut microbiome and learning what this foreign DNA that's in your gut that either drives you towards good health or bad health. So, you know, we're going to continue doing more of that, and who knows what else is coming down the road. But the beauty of what now exists, these three things combined, I believe, are the annual screen you need for functional health. It's no longer waiting to be sick to have something to screen. Because think about what you get screened for the doctor. What Tracy said, mammogram, right?
Right.
Useful, but you have to actually have cancer for that to do anything. Like there has to be defined, right?
And we have found that ultrasound actually is more accurate than a mammogram, yet we're still relying on the old tools. Why? Because we spent billions of dollars on those specific machines in all of the breast imaging centers when all we needed was an ultrasound cart. Right?
Yeah.
It was best effort at the time, but now we know better and we are doing better. And how incredible that we're now at a point where we can take a little bit of blood, scan every ounce of DNA in that blood, and assess, is that associated to a known cancer? that progress is quite incredible and so very powerful in the essence of prevention, right? Body deals with cancer every day. Body can quash cancer every day. We just need to know if body's struggling to do that, to Kash's point. If there's kind of a situation where you're always in a stress state, not able to recover, now we can get more insight into that and act more proactively to reduce that burden. So maybe it doesn't show up on future screenings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, what does somebody do with all this information? The work that we do with functional medicine clinics, I think everybody here knows there's you, our friends and family and clients that work with us, right? And then there's the clinics that we supply, and they're kind of therapeutically helping people, and we're driving their protocols because we're identifying why did it happen, right? So when you're screening with this annually, but you also have your DNA 360 run, not only are you finding that red flag marker in time, oh, there's something to look at, epigenome is doing something wild, cancer DNA is at levels it shouldn't be, the gut is speaking to us and saying there's something going on. That's often where people get stuck. I can tell you that we're seeing this proliferation of this DNA that just shouldn't have been there. But then what do? What's the next step? And we understand that your doctor may not know what to do because they don't practice medicine this way, right? They practice once you have the disease, it will help you get rid of it. They're not trying to help you prevent something that we can now see is coming. So the beauty of all of this is in the background, this clinical team has been built that can use the DNA 360 to then take a stab at, well, what biology isn't working? What would cause this? That we now know this is happening. Red flag. There's something to work on, right? And we can work on it early, which is the best time to work on it. What do we do? Well, is it the immune system? Is it the toxic estrogen that, Krista was talking about? What is that system that is very clearly failing genetically that now points to this? And the beauty is in between here is a team of clinicians that can interpret and pull all this together. So I would just give you that peace of mind also that, because we do hear this. Oh, you guys run DNA tests? I'm not interested because I don't want to know if I'm getting Alzheimer's, right? Probably the number one thing I hear. And that would be true. I would say the same thing if we weren't also saying, by the way, here's why. Here's what to do about it. Here's the broken gut gene. Here's the broken metabolism gene. Here's why. So the same thing is now true here, where we understand that until the toolkit is complete, you're still going to have that anxiety. And what does a complete toolkit look like? In the annual screen, we now see the red flags. We now know that there's something that needs action. We then go back to that foundational DNA 360 test to say, here's the biology to prioritize because we already know you're not doing well. And this clearly points to this. And a team of clinicians in between all that can do the work.
Yeah.
Right. So full circle, it's all been put together with who you see in front of you now. And this can all be done. And so moving away, just knowing that there's an option to move away from this annual blood work and disease-centric stuff, which is not going to help you until you're actually sick, to something far greater and earlier in scope.
Yeah, yeah. And what a powerful transformation it is to a genomic consult to say, here are the risk factors, here's what we need to be mindful of, but also here's how they're playing out right now. What you're doing with your diet, your lifestyle, your practices is supporting you, and we're not seeing that expression, or maybe it's not, we need to adjust it. What a powerful thing to have something very like tangible that you can poke at, a piece of paper with a number on it, with a figure on it, that really meaningfully reads into how is your current lifestyle serving the genome that you have, right?
Yeah. So that's why we put these tools together. I mean, under Tracy's direction, the team's been doing some incredible things, and knowing that I saw Tracy nodding too, how humble she is,
Don't hate your player, hate the game, baby.
So these tools, there's no coincidence here. It's very purposeful, right? There's the liquid biopsy, which is clear. We need to look for this big threat. Then the epigenetic tool really digs into the parts of what do you prioritize? The stuff that Dr. Crystal was just saying. Is it your immune system? It's still early detection. It's still markers in time. It's still where you're at today, but it's giving us some direction. Where is the epigenome telling us that there's something to work on? Again, some of you have seen the report. It focuses on various areas. And then the gut, knowing what's going on there. Dr. Gundry just put out a book called Gut Check, right? And he's a well-known cardiologist. He speaks and writes books all the time. And one of the things he said is he still practices medicine 6 days a week, by the way. So he's podcasting, speaking, all, but he still practices. He said that since he started testing the gut, there isn't one single chronic disease patient that he has that doesn't have a gut issue. Not even one, literally not one. He said it's absolute. And this is why we also believe that we need to have a gut microbiome test as part of a recurring annual screen, because these are it's a sort of the triangulation of here's this big problem that everyone wants to avoid. Here's this signal from the epigenome telling us what to focus on and prioritize, what system's not working today. Here's this major system, the gut, that seems to be tied to every chronic disease in some ways. So we need to balance things off. These two things point to what we need to work on for this. And then, by the way, this is all sitting on top of your genetics, which points to your hard wiring. So we know what to prioritize and do. So we now have this incredible tool. So having said all that, Tracy, I would ask you, how do people actually order testing, start working and doing this type of thing? Do they need to be engaged with our clinical team? Do they just go online and buy it? How do they do it?
So there's a couple of ways to do it, right? If they want to do just liquid biopsy, just gut 360, just PGX, whatever it is that they want to do, they can find all of that in the website. But we do have an annualized bundle that we've created that includes the epigenetics, the cancer testing, and the microbiome. And someone will put that in the chat window for them, and we give them an aggregate. They can also use, PayPal allows you to make payments on some of these things. So, I know $2,000 can be a lot of money to some people, right? It's a lot of money to most people, but it's an investment in you, right? It's an investment in you, your wellness, your longevity. So I think PayPal, chunks it down to either 4 or 6 payments, which is far more, manageable for many. But all you have to do is just go to the website, Kashif, and you can find any of them.
Okay, so I see B's dropped in here. It's called the Annual Vitality Bundle.
Correct.
So all 3 are in there. This gets you everything you need. And that's awesome that there's a payment structure, like a payment plan structure.
Right.
So people can take this as a proper annual screening and not have to worry about that annual cost. It's spread out over
And to
time.
most people in the United States, this is tax deductible. Understand that when you have a 7.5% expense on your medical, and that's aggregate, that's across dental, vision, any prescriptions, any costs associated with any of those areas, that's all an aggregate number. And it's 7.5% of your AGI, which is your adjusted gross income. You can claim this and get a good portion of that in a tax credit towards your tax bill. So it does make a difference if you track everything like I do.
Yeah. Cool. So there were some questions in the Q&A box. We can jump to those. Maria's asking about the RGCC test. I'm actually not familiar with that.
So the RGCC test is essentially another group that's doing liquid biopsy. They're looking for the same markers that we do. They do it much in the same way. So it's comparable, it's just somebody else, but they're not using our genetic report as the foundation. So that would be one of the biggest differences, right? And a lot of people don't. They use your basic list of genes as part of what they use for their cross-referencing, and that we don't believe that that's enough.
Yeah, so in terms of the outcome, you may get a screen with a red flag, but then what to do about it? You need the rest of the story, which is what I was talking about earlier. There's these other tools, there's the foundational functional genes, and then there's a team that knows how to interpret that, including people like Dr. Krista right here, right?
Yeah.
Another question from Crystal. Is there a list of the 16 systems we can get emailed or post here so I can make note of the 16 systems?
Yeah, there's 16 systems that we test for in liquid biopsy, Kashif. So
Okay.
there's multiple different systems for cancer, right? There's different parts of the body. You've got stomach, breast, lung. There's 16 of them. So of those, yes, we can. In fact, I believe it's on the liquid biopsy webpage that's up. So hop on there and take a look. There should be a lot of information in that particular post.
So Mary's asking, after the DNA test, we have a meeting with someone from the clinic to go over the results and recommendations. two answers there. I'm gonna get Chris to jump in here too.
Mhm.
The way that the DNA test specifically is designed, the report is designed, it allows you to self-navigate. So it's not like your typical clinical report, which is just a bunch of data. It is pre-interpreted. So it is designed to speak to someone who doesn't know a thing about DNA, right?
Yeah.
Give me what I need to know. That's how it's designed. Now, in terms of some of these other tests, Dr. Krista, I think there is some medical intervention needed for some of them, not all of them.
There is, and in additional also for the DNA 360, yes, it is something that should you not want any support, you can navigate on your own. Additional to that, though, we do offer navigation calls. So you can work with someone from our team and they will walk you through that report where you find things. So in particular, if you come in and you're like, oh, I'm really concerned about my cardiovascular wellness, they can orient you within the report and the information there. But for
And
the
those navigation calls are included in the cost of your kits, so know that.
yeah. And
Sorry.
for the liquid biopsy, no, please. I appreciate clarity. For the liquid B, and hold me clear and honest here, there is a consult afforded to you. It is with a medical doctor, so it will be
With an
something very
oncologist specifically.
with an oncologist.
Mhm.
And so that will be very specific. They'll walk you through the entirety of the report. There's
Right.
3 different sections, all of which are really important, right? There's a lot of pre-work that goes into this test alongside the sample. There's a very thorough medical history, right? Because we appreciate there needs to be more than just DNA that goes into an assessment. And so that oncologist will sit with you through those various parts of the assessment. And should there be a concern, should there be a mass of DNA that is noteworthy, they will offer suggestions on next steps, in particular, what sort of imaging or other confirmatory studies, what doctors you might want to talk to, and how you can talk to them. Again, remembering that this is still relatively new, and so they can support and guide next steps should there be something concerning.
Dirk is saying that besides, disease states, we need to understand how the body works. And what he's saying is that there are always malignant cells arising in the body. Typical, the body has processes like autophagy and immune response, apoptosis to deal with that. And he's saying, understand how the body works. We can adopt the diet and lifestyle to measure, to be optimal and sort of create health. And he's right on. And so what we're saying is that these things, I hate to use such a sort of blunt word, but it's optional, right? There are some cancers that are genetic that are coming, that are rare in nature, but the majority of them are optional, meaning that they're caused, just like Dirk is saying. But having said that, so I think there's something that is hidden in what Dirk's saying, which is that we always have cancer anyway. What is this test looking for?
Mhm.
What do you think about that, Dr. Krista?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of wisdom in this, right? There's always going to be every once in a while a renegade cell that's like, cool, I'm going to mutate in a way that I shouldn't be, and I'm going to start amassing. And the body is aware of that. The body is, checking up on its unruly renegade cells in children, and it will quite literally squash that. There's mechanisms within the cells that when it notices its neighbor is replicating too quickly, it will quash that. The concern becomes, though, when that replication gets to a point that the body can't do that quashing. And so what this liquid B is effectively doing is when it scans, yes, it might see, those 1 or 2 strands from something that the body has a handle on and has quashed. We're really looking for numbers and volumes here. At what point in time are you tipping over to a point where the body is not going to be controlling it? And so I want to be clear, there can be very good normal tests where you might see 1 or 2 strands. It's going to be when you see greater numbers than that, and the doctor will review that. It's different in every instance. So, if you see 3, don't stress. Doctor will review that. But really, this is checking in for when replication gets to a point where the body can't handle it and you need additional focus, support, and help.
So that it comes down to the word that we use for everything, which is interpretation, right?
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
data. What does it all mean? And then that's what what the DNA company claims to be good at, and because we prioritize it, interpretation. What does it all mean, right?
Absolutely.
And that's really the key here is that volumes and numbers are a part of interpretation. It's not binary yes or no. There's a lot more to it.
And if I could offer a further example there. So again, the liquid B is that serum test. It looks through all the DNA, but a lot of the work in advance of that is filling out surveys. And why is this important, right? So let's pretend this liquid B comes up with a few cells that might be associated with breast cancer, right? And in that pre-survey, we hear that maybe you're behind on breast cancer screens. Maybe there's a history in the family that elevates that concern. There's an element here that we rarely look at just one metric alone, because one metric alone is just one metric. We want to look at everything, interpret in context. And that's the power not only of doing the several reports that are contained within liquid biopsy, but also sitting with a person, sitting with the human and saying, here is my health story. How does this interface with the information in front of you? Because that's where the power sits, right? That larger conversation, that larger context. You're not just a number. The model of medicine that we're trying to get away from is, here's a piece of paper, here's a number, cool, this is what we're going to do with it, without looking at that larger context of the person, their history, and how they're managing their health, what's important to them.
Heather's got an interesting question. The epigenetic DNA aging test speaks about the gut, but we also have a gut test. Why does someone need both?
Yeah, Kasha, do you want to tackle that or shall I?
Yeah, sure. We can both so the gut test is looking at your gut microbiome very specifically, right? So it's looking for actual flora and looking for foreign entities in your gut, good or bad. And it's telling you how much of those foreign entities you have and whether that is good or bad for each one. The epigenetic test is not looking for what's in your gut. It's kind of assuming through algorithms gut function. And maybe Dr. Christie, you can speak to that.
Exactly, 100%. So I kind of think of the gut biome test as a snapshot of time, whereas that epigenetic marker is more a story of the past several months, right? So it's kind of the other example you can think of when you're screening blood for blood sugar and insulin resistance, right? There's the blood sugar mark in the moment, and then the HbA1c will speak to the story of several months. So the gut biome is going to say, in that moment, how has your diet been? How have you been feeding your bug friends within? How are the balances? And then this epigenetic is saying, based on those balances, based on those records over the past several months, this is how it is impacting your health. It is contributing positively. It is influencing your metabolics in a good way. It is influencing your weight in a good way. It's influencing your immune in a good way, or the opposite, right? We're seeing evidence that the populations within your gut are not being helpful too. So it's a beautiful 1-2 punch, I think, in the sense that you have really good understanding of how you are in the moment, right? How you've gotten there. Is the diet serving you? And separate to that, has that been sustained? Is that beneficially contributing to your longevity?
Yeah. So the 1-2 punch, like you said, it's both views. And this is where, siloed thing and go back to what I said earlier. This bundle and the thinking behind it, it's much more sophisticated than it appears. What it looks like is there's 3 products put together, right? It's much deeper than that. This is what we know people need to know. Right? This is exactly where the future of screening should be. So it's not just, here's some cool stuff, let's bundle it up together and offer a discount.
Well, it's really cool too.
Yeah, it is cool
But
stuff.
this
That's
is
for
where
sure.
screening is going. It's not just that it should be, Kashif.
Yeah.
This is where most of the insurance companies in America, they know they have to get their mind around this. Right now, Blue Cross Blue Shield sends out a free, the colon test. What's it called? Do you remember?
Oh, the fecal cult sample?
Yeah, they send that out free so that people will do that prior to and to encourage people having colonoscopies. But it reduced the number of colonoscopies in the United States. So it's important to know that this is not what should become. This is what it is. And as that continues to be pushed from the consumer at the drug companies, at the insurance companies, they're going to have to get on board with really looking at people individually and genetically. One of the things that you say all the time is, somebody of your size should not be taking the same supplement amount of Dr. Kosterman. But also genetically, you're a male, she's a female. There's going to be differences there too. And none of that has been factored for hundreds and hundreds of years. And now that's all changing because of what we've done and people like us in the DNA space.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Deanna's asking, someone who's recently been diagnosed with cancer, is there a benefit to them here? And I understand what she's saying is like, I already know, but the benefit is if the terrain is in the state where cancer was able to poke its ugly nose out and win, not win, but at least it's present, then who knows? What the way we think about cancer, there's breast cancer, lung cancer, gut cancer. You got to stop thinking about it that way, right? Women that get a mastectomy often end up with ovarian cancer and vice versa. The women are being told to cut their fallopian tubes out because of the
Right.
BRCA, and they end up with breast cancer. So this inflammatory state and this immune suppressed state, the tools and the problems that lead to this, yeah, to me that would be a big red flag to get tested to know what is going on head to toe. Right? You know what you know about one thing, but what else do you need to know early, early, right? So I would say
Well,
that's enough
and
information
to
there.
ask Dr. Kosterman, because I'm not sure about the answer to this, and again, you're the doctor, and Kashyap and I just play one on television. So does the test not tell really what that load is? Like how much is there, what's present? Does it become a measurable tool?
It is, I'm going to be very plain. It's not diagnostic. You cannot use, like, even knowing a person has cancer, you cannot use this tool alone to say, to confirm cancer, it's biopsy, the traditional form.
Right.
This can be leveraged, and I really more see this in the aftercare, not necessarily in the moment. I mean, in the moment, I think Kashyap does raise an interesting point as to scanning for metastases or other emergences,
Right.
because that greater likelihood of something breaking off original tumor and spreading out throughout the body, or just a larger struggle state within the body, birthing other instances, right? So I think there's wisdom there, but where I would see the real power of this is going to be in that aftercare. We're really shifting away within cancer care from thinking of, you've had cancer, you've beaten it, you now no longer have disease. We're now using the phrase inactive disease, meaning there's a reverence that it was there. There is a possibility it could come back, and there needs to be monitoring and proactive measures to ensure it does stay in its inactive state. Right. Part of some of the struggle that we were having with cancer originally was we were kind of putting World War III on it, right? We were attacking it to the point where we were destroying the body, and people were often dying from the treatments for cancer. Treatments are becoming a little bit less aggressive, not to say ineffective, just a little bit less aggressive. And there's more focus and energy on the aftercare, keeping it as a chronic illness, as an inactive disease, as opposed to something that we claim full victory over, you know, where it's gone. We know, especially now with this DNA technology, when we scan the blood, that's not true, right? There's a few instances, there's a few sorts of cancers, but by and large, that's not true. And so this is a spectacular monitoring device in the aftermath. In particular, like, I spent a lot of time working in the aftercare space, and, you know, the recovery, the psychological recovery from that is incredible, but there's always this looming fear, this fear of what happens if it comes back. And this is one of those methods, one of those tools that we have at our access that we can scan and keep atop these sorts of things. Yeah, but
Andrew has an interesting question. A lot of talk around cancer, especially when it comes to prevention, is usually around women, and breast cancer or ovarian cancer. And he's saying, what about us guys? Are we looking for the male cancers like prostate, etc.?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Matt, I think maybe Kashyap, you actually might know these stats, so hold me honest. Men, the more prevalent cancers tend to be prostate and colon,
Right.
alongside lung. And so this test will screen for all of those amongst the other ones. And let's also be plain, breast cancer is possible in men.
Yeah.
So it will scan for that as well. It's not a breast cancer, while it is gender biased and that you see it more in females, that it happens and exists within men, and we screen for that too.
Yeah. Okay. Mary's asking, do you offer detailed protocols then what is in the report for specifically genetically identified issues like ApoE44, 9p21? Yeah, so that's what we were talking about earlier, Mary. When it comes to things like ApoE44, 17 to 25 times elevated risk of dementia is what the clinical world will tell you, right? That's exactly why we built this team, working under Dr. Krista, that has been educated and trained on how to think about the genome functionally and how to take the protocols that they already know and understand and filter them through genetic or through personalized lens, right? So the short answer is whether it's a single call or whether it's a several month program, which for things of this nature, I would suggest diving a little deeper. That team has been built. And so the report you get will tell you, like you identified a red flag, how to deal with that. What's the action plan? Here's your genomic plan. Yes, there's a team. I would say, B, maybe we can drop in an email address where Mary can connect with somebody, and we'll get you set up with that.
Absolutely.
Olga's asking about the Galleria test. So the Galleria test for the cancer screening test and how they differ.
So the Galleria test is a prescription only test. Again, it's very similar. It's generally recommended and indicated only for adults who are 50 or over and that are statistically considered 13 times more likely to test positive for a cancer somewhere in the body. So it's a I mean, you can get it through a healthcare provider anywhere in the country, but you have to essentially qualify in order for them to be able to put it under certain insurances.
Okay, Dirk. Dr. Alessio Fasano, he's a GI doc in Harvard, says that all chronic inflammatory disease begins in the gut from gut dysbiosis, creating increased permeability. Yeah, your immune system is in your gut, so for sure. It becomes dysregulated, leading to disease states. I have to wonder if the unchecked replication that Dr. Chris is talking about of malignant cells occurs because the immune system is no longer working. That's one of the big reasons. So getting it back to optimal is the prescription. Yes, sir. Please.
Yes.
We need Dirk to join us on the next webinar as a guest.
I think Dirk would be a great guest. I see him on these all the time. And he has like the greatest questions and it's so well thought out. I think you type them in advance. Am I right? Do you keep like an open Word document where you have all these and you're just copying and pasting? I want to know, Dirk, type the answer to me because I want to know if you do that, which I think would be brilliant, by the way. I would love it. That would be the way I would do it, right? Dr. Kosterman, same thing. Crystal, real quick to answer your question. Yes, we will have training for our practitioners on all of these tests except for liquid biopsy that
Correct.
must be performed by an oncologist registered in the home state of the patient, which is what our network does. But you will get trained on how to read that report. You'll get trained on how to understand that from a provider perspective. Always remembering that if you do not have an MD, you cannot speak to it as an authority on the subject matter, but rather somebody who is educated on the subject matter. Just my little legal disclaimer, Kasia. You know, you love those.
That's why you're here.
That's always why I'm here.
All right, Sheldon, if we've had cancer before, would there be any residual effects that might show up on the test or just current stats? So residual and current, we're really saying the same thing. What's happening in the body today, right? That's what you need to know. And so, yes, if somebody has already been afflicted, you would need to keep checking, right? It's an early detection is key. So it's not that it's continuing or new, it's just knowing today, irrespective of the cause. So yes, Sheldon, this is a perfect scenario where you would use this tool. Maria, are we working with the Center for New Medicine in Irvine for the liquid B test?
No.
No, okay. Okay, it looks like we've been through the questions. Any other thoughts, guys? Any other questions?
I want Dirk to tell me if he keeps a paper.
Yeah, he hasn't answered yet.
I want to know.
Oddly quiet.
There he is.
There he is.
No, I typed them in real time, but I can multitask, so I lose track of what you're discussing. Dirk, we love that. Where are you, Dirk? What country are you in?
He wants to come to Toronto. How delightful.
Well,
So
but
I'm in Toronto.
Maybe he's already here.
He may be. So our office is actually in LA. And to tell you the truth, I have no idea where it is. I've never been there. Tracy knows where it is. She's sitting in it. But it's in LA. I'm in Toronto, but the team, the DNA companies, are based out of LA.
Yeah.
Left to Toronto some time ago.
Western PA. Okay, yeah, 5 hours to Toronto.
Yeah,
You should go hang out with Dr. Koshman. She'll buy you a cup of coffee.
yeah.
She will. She likes
totally will.
fancy coffee too.
Okay, Sheldon, FSA and HSA. I love those programs, can I just tell you? Tax-free savings accounts in order to use for medical expenses. Yes, it does apply as an approved test in most FSAs and HSAs. It would just depend on which one you had. So if you have, generally you get a Visa card with them, you should be able to run that Visa card because it is indeed a medical biometric test, and that's how it's listed in the shopping cart. So you should be able to use that.
Cool. When do we learn how to interpret DNA codes? So there's a few answers to that. The report itself was designed to teach you. So there's the written report, which is your results. There's different sections, mood, sleep, etc. And then there's the gene cast. So the gene cast was a tool that was designed to teach you about the genes themselves so you can interpret them and then apply it to whatever it is you're dealing with. That being said, there's only so much that certain regulatory bodies will allow us to hand over to a consumer in a report. So there's a lot more that we know that we can't necessarily say, which requires clinical intervention, which is why we have a team, right? So to the degree that there's information available in the report, learn it by first reading the written reports, and then the interpretation part comes from the gene cast. Spend some time listening to the gene cast. That's telling you how to use these genes and apply them in different settings. And if you want actual training, we do have a curriculum. We have a curriculum that you can subscribe or enroll in and get certified. So that's also possible. And maybe B can drop in a note there, Vivian, for you to learn about that. Okay, Elizabeth, how differently will this liquid B reporting operate with the difference with the medical system of the case? So Canada, it's not in Canada yet, right? The liquid B? No? So okay, so not yet available in Canada.
Oh, her
Potentially.
face changed.
Oh,
Oh, folks, you are learning things real time. Kashif and I are learning something real time.
So
what?
as of 4 o'clock Pacific Daylight Time, no, it is not available in Canada. By
Okay.
Tuesday, that answer is likely to change. So
Why
be
the T?
watching Kashif's Instagram, you guys, and when it changes, he'll let you know.
Why the T's? Why did we have to start with no? And just go straight to the yes.
Because legally that's the answer as of this moment.
Of course, and that's
But
what
I
they
like Dirk's next comment here. He's going to go and teach you how to do the whole gym thing, Doc. Dirk, you got to
will wait
video
for you
that.
outside, Dirk. I will not run. I will not run, but I will wait.
Unless somebody is chasing her, then she will run.
Then she will run. Then she will run well. I'm told I'm a good runner. I just hate it.
Well, okay, so the Vivian, there's a note up there for the curriculum if you truly want to get trained in order to practice. The DNAU, there's a link there, DNA-u.com, where there's an actual curriculum that you can get certified as a functional genomics practitioner and truly practice and add it to your practice. Ted is asking, I have no medical background, so forgive me, but as each patient has a different medical history on a different medication, this will be covered under the interpretation of the data.
So the intake is really extensive. This is not just like going to the doctors and filling out one page and signing informed consent. The intake in this is very extensive. We're going to ask dozens and dozens of questions. We're going to require that you list all medications that you take, all supplements that you use. We're going to ask a lot of things that seem somewhat invasive because without all of that aggregate data, we can't get a good interpretation. That's the legal answer. Dr. Kosterman can give you the medical one.
Yeah, so depending on how you choose to engage with us, for liquid B, which is really what Tracy's referring to with the incredibly extensive, very long, it took a long time to program that all out. It's a really extensive intake, in part because there are so many different forms of cancer, which require so many different history insights and so many different, have you been doing these sorts of screenings? So all of that will be done, and then that will then be offered to the oncologist, who will take that in totality and interpret the results. Again, everything should be personalized. I love that there's nothing to forgive. You don't know medicine, but you know the very basics of how it should be done, right? Extensive medical history, extensive data take, and then time to synthesize and time to plan and understand next steps. So yes, all of that is done. All of that is important because that's how we personalize medicine.
And
Data.
Ted has a follow-up to that, Doc. How's the data protected?
Yeah, it's so all of this, we guarantee our data is not sold. It's all kept in-house, it's all kept encrypted. It's not something that we offer out to the world. So it is encrypted internally. Once testing has been done, it's destroyed in a way that is safe, such that no one else can access that, the quite literal biologic information either.
And we are HIPAA certified, which is important to know. We have tertiary redundancy for the servers, so that if one server site actually goes dark, you would never know, the next one would go live. So we take great pride in the protection of our data.
Yeah.
And this comes from the intention of the company. So keep in mind that most genetic companies are in the data selling business,
Right.
because your DNA doesn't change. You know, once you get your DNA scan, that's it. That's the interaction. And so they had to become data selling businesses. But we instead took the path of becoming a clinical insight company. How do we actually help people? So for the most part, we're not even testing for the data that the data buyers want. You know, they're not looking for the functional genes, they're looking for disease markers and disease-centric things where they can make drugs. So having said, and for that reason, we're one of the few companies that will actually destroy the sample. When you get a DNA test, what normally happens is your saliva gets frozen in a -80 freezer and is sold for research, and you sign consent for that. We destroy it. That is worth thousands of dollars. It's worth far more than the test you paid for, but we had to make that decision. Who do we want to be, right? And so we decided we're going to be the company that helps people. We're going to draw those people to us. And part of that promise is not being a data selling company.
And I have spent a ton of Kashif's money protecting our data. That's important to know.
And I was just going to commend Kashif for that decision early on, because it was
that was huge, because they offered him a ton of money and he literally said, thanks, but no thanks.
Yep,
and that was taking a high road that nobody else took in this space.
I think Dr. Christo was actually there when Amgen came to our office wanting to buy data. And we sat and talked to them, picked their brains and learned everything, then never called them back. You know? Yeah.
I think they're still bitter, Kashif.
Yeah.
Hey, to quote you, don't hate the player, hate the game. Good job, Kashif.
You know, that's the way it works. That's the way we roll.
All right, Dirk, I like your integrated approach with a set of tests, except for the DNA 360. This should be standard part of every yearly physical. Also add other tests, urine analysis, saliva, mucus, sweat, galvanic skin response. And we're not going to stop. We're going to keep making this better. But in terms of the DNA 360, there's no need to retest. As you know, Dirk, DNA doesn't change, right?
Right. Well, that's what he's saying, with the exception of that, which we don't need to do repetitively. That's why we came out with the bundle, right? Because we want people to look at these numbers. And somebody asked the question, what happens if you have a positive? Do you test again? Yes, you wait 6 months and you test again. Why? We want to measure the difference. That's the only way that you're really going to get accurate information, is by constantly measuring and making sure that you know what you're tracking and why you're tracking it.
Andrew's asking when the reports are updated. He saw some things that were conflicting and contradictory. So one thing I would tell you, Andrew, is the way the reports are designed is for you to be able to read a problem and interpret for the context of that problem. So the same gene result in one problem may be good news and bad news somewhere else, right? And the recommendation may be to do something and not do something somewhere else. And we did it this way so that you without any need for training, can go read the word anxiety, look up under anxiety, what's going on genetically, and know what to do. But the same genes in anxiety may drive something else. And in that context, it's actually a beneficial thing. Right? So the contradictory thing, again, don't think of it as a gene, think of it as a problem. The reports are designed to solve problems, to make it easy for you. Now go back to the gene cast to learn about the genes. Right? So that's the more static information. Jody saying,
I
I
love
appreciate,
Jody's question.
yeah, yeah. So what would happen if the
Does the
company?
term "when hell freezes over" ring any bells to anybody?
Is that the official answer?
So Jody, as the CEO, here's what I can tell you. What would happen if we ever sold the company? There's certain caveats that you can put in place in a sale as a condition of sale. Kashif would stand on that hill and die on that hill to make sure that that was the condition of sale, that that data was not sold, that data was not manipulated into something else in order to be sold. He's been very adamant about protecting all of our patients, all of our clientele, and all of our providers. And as the CEO that he selected, I will continue in that vein.
Yeah,
And I
and
stand by that as well, and I'm pretty annoying, so it'll work out.
and we have agreements with you, like anyone that's enrolled or worked with anything, we have paperwork with you that the company is responsible for, not just the individuals.
Right.
So somebody buying a company is responsible for what the company committed to. You know, and we've signed a privacy agreement with you that says certain things, done deal, it's grandfathered. They can't unwind that, right?
Correct.
So, okay, so Diane is a 71-year-old who last summer was told she has a complex ovarian cyst. One doctor said it was cancer, one said not sure, another said they think it's not cancer. So she has ultrasounds. So this is exactly what we're trying to help you with, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is exactly the point, is looking, trying to look from the outside in when we have now the ability to look at the deepest level at the DNA of the cancer that you're trying to figure out. Right? How much more precise can we be? So this is exactly the use case where the
Yeah.
confusion that various opinions, you, Diane, are the person that needs to do this today. Right? You need
Right.
to do this today. That's how you'll get the answer.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, I appreciate your stance on privacy. Thank you. And forgive me, I've misinterpreted, but it isn't possible with the wording in your privacy policy, the government could potentially demand your data in the future, and it would have to be handed over. So I can tell you that when the government, the things you've heard about, that data is sold. The things you've heard about in certain police cases and stuff, that's the business. They sell that data, right? Now, the actual legalities of government demanding things, I don't know the answer, but I do know that the instances that I've seen and heard of where there's some government interaction, they're paying for that data that I have seen, that I know of.
So there's one thing that you did, Kashif, that I'm sure you did it with forethought, but one of the things that you did when you built the company was you put half of our storage in Canada and half of our storage in the United States. You remember doing that? The United States samples and that information is sent outside the jurisdiction of the United States into the Canadian redundancy servers and vice versa. So when we get a subpoena, in the event that that may or may not have happened in May of last year, and the subpoena says, we want these records on this person that is allegedly in Arizona, our response is, we have no jurisdiction over that data. It's in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that subpoena may or may not have died on my desk.
Yeah, and that's why we're a multinational sort of residency. I'm here, they're there, so okay, Steve is asking if we open up to insurance, filling will not compromise the security data, the genome. So insurance, we don't open up the data to insurance, we just claim costs, so we don't provide them anything.
No, and the only thing we can provide them, Steve, is a diagnosis code which comes from the ICD-10 list, which is a national list, and we have to choose from that, and then a CPT code, which is a centralized coding system. So if you get PGX, for example, which is one of the ones that is an insurance reimbursable, the rest are not, so they are not relevant in this conversation. The PGX requires certain diagnosis in order to be reimbursed. So we indicate those codes. Those codes are already known to your insurance company, but they don't get the DNA data that comes with that PGX test. What they get is the list of the drugs that your specific genetics say you should or should not use.
Yeah, without confirming that you actually need them, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's
It's
correct.
yeah. What if you were to need them, here's the version,
That's
right?
correct.
Deanna saying her husband was recently a stem cell donor recipient. And she's, I guess what Deanna's, it sounds like she's asking if we want to work with her on research, because she's saying willing to volunteer. So,
That
Dr.
that
Krishna,
We've followed clients with a transport, or a transplant.
send us an email, Deanna. Send it to my, just do it to CEO@thednacompany.com. And reference tonight's webinar, please.
Ted, would our primary be able to interpret results, or is this something we do with the clinical team? So, can somebody use their own doctor?
For which test, Kash?
For the liquid B, I guess it has to be an oncologist.
Liquid B has to be an oncologist, which we provide. That's part of, we can't order a test, a cancer test for somebody and not provide them with the medical intervention behind it. So
Yeah.
that's just the law in the
We do
United
it.
States. So, but you can take your results, your DNA 360, your gut biome, whatever, you can take those to your primary care doctor. And if they are trained functionally, they should be able to take a look at those and help you action those results, or you can just work with one of our people, either way.
Yeah. So Ted, the clinical review is part of the program, part of the test. So it's embedded into the cost and the test itself. Okay. So we've been through everyone's questions. I think everyone here understands what our intention was and why we did what we did, is that we started off as a testing company, looking at the genome to figure out what was missing, this thing that's inside of us, this human instruction manual. If we have sequenced it and billions of dollars were spent researching it, why are people still so sick? And it was a big question. Why is there so much chronic? Why is 90% of this $4 trillion healthcare budget spent on chronic disease management that doesn't need to happen? And so we first set out to deal with that, and we did. And a lot of you got tested, learned how much there is to learn. We then built a clinical team to say, well, people need more. And so we can dive deeper. There's things that we can say if we're intaking you and sort of managing you as a patient. And it became clear that there was this need for, where am I at today? Can you please tell me how things are going? How do I know things are working? And so over this last year, we had to decide, based on all the thousands of people we worked with, what are the things we need to measure to help you the way we know how to help you, which is functional root cause, not disease-centric. And this is what we came up with. So this screening tool, which was the purpose of tonight, why we're all here today, we believe is something that everybody should be doing at least once a year. You know, it's a way to sort of check in without having to see a check engine light. We don't want you to go there. We want it to be far before that, right? And this is the best way that we know how to help you with this, because again, the big C question, we can look early so that you can act early. The epigenome to tell us what system is failing at any given time, you know, what's not expressing properly, so where do you prioritize? The gut, which is connected to every chronic condition, and if there's something not going well there, you know you need to act. So with these three things, you know where your body's at, and you're no longer looking at blood work that's disease centric, where within a certain range, you know, a range of 5 to 150, you're okay, right? How is 5 to 150 or 2 to 300? How are those the same thing, right? Versus a definitive, here's exactly where you're at, right? And not disease-centric markers that are associated to disease, and markers that you only look at if you actually have a disease. Functional health. How do we keep you out of a disease state and healthy? How do we know you're actually healthy? This is how we do it. So whenever there's any dial turn left or right on any of these tests, we know there's action to be taken far before disease sets in. And that's our intention. This is why we built the bundle. So it's there for you. Annual vitality bundle. It's sitting in the chat box. I suggest everybody click, take a look. And the other consideration we talked about the other day, we didn't talk about tonight. B also dropped the PGX report in there, which is now insurance covered. So anyone that asks the question, is this covered by insurance? The bundle is not, but that product is the PGX, and everybody should have this in their toolkit. You should know,
Absolutely.
God forbid, at any point you need medication, right? We don't want to go there, but if that happens, getting it right.
Yeah.
Not making
Yeah.
a mistake, because that is such a major problem in our healthcare system today, right?
Ted, no, we're not the only company offering this type of test, but like we said in the beginning, we're the only ones using our DNA interpretation to drive the results and to gather better outcomes for our patients. And in our opinion, it is superior. I'm sure other people may not feel that way, and I'm sorry that they're wrong, but it just is what it is.
So there are other people that are offering testing, but they're offering it as a siloed job. Let's go test for cancer. Let's go test for the clinical team that's been built, and the way they think is, how do you collectively, why did we bundle this up as an annual screening? Because we had to collectively think of all of what we need to know to address everything that could potentially be happening in the body. So there's nothing left. Because if you only look for this, but if you haven't looked at the gut, you've answered half the story. The gut will tell you, wait a second, this came out okay, but there's still work to do, right? You're still not doing well. So that whole fulsome story is done by these three tests. Looks like there's another question here. Andrew, was there a link in a sample epigenetic report? I remember B once saying that we do have access to one. I don't know how people access it. Maybe B is gonna let you know.
Yeah, she's answering that right now.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Oh, another question here. Oh, it's the same question. Oh, how long will it take to have the results?
Depends on the test.
21 days on average, business days for liquid biopsy.
Okay. And-
Our PGX is 14 business days, DNA 360, 21 business days, gut 360, 21 business days. There's another test in there somewhere. What's the other one?
DNAging, or did you say that?
Teenaging?
Epigenetics, 21.
Yeah. Okay, so about a month, in the worst case, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes volumes increase.
And we're getting it much faster, honestly, Cash, but I would rather say 21 days and get it in 15, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, guys, we had blocked until 7:30, but if we have all your questions answered and there's nothing left to discuss, we've told you what we needed to tell you. If there's any questions, let us know, but the links are here. Again, this is something that we built this because you keep asking us, oh, I did the test, now what? I've understood this about my cardiovascular. What do I ask my doctor to test for? We kept getting that question over and over and over and over again. So we built it.
Yeah.
We built what, based on our thinking, functional thinking, here's what you need. Here's the answer. Okay, question box is closed. Any other questions, guys?
Oh, we have another one, Kashif.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's a compliment.
Oh, thank you,
Thank
Mary.
you, Mary.
Don't tell him that because he'll be all arrogant at the end of this and we have to put up with him.
I'm okay with that.
You're a rock star. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Yes, there will be a replay, Leah,
Yeah, we got a replay.
and all the links will be in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a list of supplements the PGX tests for? Look at the sample report. That should show a lot of what it tests for.
Mhm.
And keep in mind, PGX is for medical drugs, not for supplements.
Yeah.
It does have some supplements that it looks
Has
at.
some?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's just a handful, but they do. And
Okay.
they look at some anesthesia protocols as well.
Okay. So in terms of age, it doesn't matter. We have a lot of children with behavioral development issues that we're dealing with. 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and we've actually developed a kit that makes it a lot easier. Where some of you have done the DNA 360, where you need to provide a saliva sample. So we have a kit with a sponge so that a parent can actually extract the saliva. So age doesn't matter. We can do it at any time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ted. Crystal, you're welcome.
Just offer
And
one
actually,
qualifier to the age comment. So if you're going to be doing our gut 360 test, if you're doing it on someone who's under the age of 3 or someone who is pregnant, you can still do the test for those people, but make sure you let us know because it requires a special interpretation. Okay, because those two populations, so people under 3, little babies, and people who are pregnant, their biome is going to look different. Like their normal biome, a healthy biome for them will look different than the average population. So it needs to be a unique interpretation. They can still take it, just those ages get called out.
so Diana, so Diane, sorry, she missed this. So in terms of ovarian cysts, there's two things to consider there. There's the cancer screening test we were talking about. So if you know that you're in a certain state and you want to monitor and be sort of preemptive and preventative, the liquid biopsy will look for cancer DNA and tell you where you're at. The second consideration is, why did that cyst form? What's going on with your hormones? What's going on with, the response that should have happened? And that's where the DNA 360 is foundationally what's going on in your biology, right? So the DNA 360, but with a question of that nature, I wouldn't sort of self-serve and just get the report and try and read through it. I would book time with somebody, because it's also such an important matter. You don't want to just leave it to chance, right? So
Right.
that exact thing, DNA 360, book some time. You may find that after you hear what you hear on the call, you may want to book a program to actually work on things and prevent something worse, right? Dirk, something geared towards pregnant women. Um, Not specifically, no. I mean, it's just interpreting for the context, right?
Right. We
There's
just
are
need to
things I
know.
would say, like, the methylation cascade and the question of folic acid, how many women fall into postpartum depression because they didn't realize they don't metabolize folic acid well, and they shouldn't have ever taken it. So there are certain nuances. It's the same information, same test, same data, just different questions to ask, right?
Mhm.
Lance, what test should I ask my doctor to check for gut health problems? So this is exactly it. It's the gut health test, which is in the bundle, or you can order it separately. So if you go to the website, thednacompany.com, you will see a gut microbiome test.
Called
You will
Gut 360.
gut 360, sorry. And you'll see DNA aging. Both of those things look at the gut from different perspectives. One is the gut 360 is, where is my gut today in terms of gut microbiome flora? The DNA aging test will look at more, like Dr. Chris was saying, a longitudinal, 6-month view of gut function, right? So both of those will give you different info on that.
Mhm.
L is asking, is there a legitimate reason for someone not wanting to do the DNA test due to fears of DNA biological identity getting to the wrong hands? Depending who you're working with, yes. There are companies that truly are just in the business of selling data. So read the terms, make sure you understand the privacy policy, ask the question straightforward, and if you don't get an answer that you appreciate, walk away. That is the business of some of these companies, and it's understanding that many, many millions and billions of dollars went into funding these businesses, and then they realize, wait a second, DNA doesn't change, so I deal with this customer once and we're done.
Right.
They had to come up with a business model, which is selling data. That is the industry. And so we came up with a different model, which is helping people. And that's how we keep our business going.
Yeah.
Okay. But we are.
I don't know. Did you answer Lance's question?
Yeah, we talked about the gut test.
Okay.
So it's not about asking your doctor. It's on the DNA company website. Um, all right, guys. So the link is here. So either click and open it now or copy and paste it to look at it later with your family. But it's when this call closes, you won't have access to it anymore. So click here, copy and paste it, show your friends and family. Be the ambassador, be that sort of person that brings change to the family and the community. Everybody needs that, right? So it's the annual vitality bundle, or if you feel like there's just a solo path you want to go down between the gut, the DNA aging, the cancer screening, they're all open as individual tests on the website. We do believe that this is the thing that you should be doing once a year as a bundle. And we tried to price it as low as we can to make that easy for you to do. There's a lot of executive screeners out there that are, and that's essentially what this is, executive screener, meaning that you're taking charge of your own health, right? You're not waiting for a doctor to tell you you're sick. Usually $10,000 plus. There's a company that is in the same industry as us, using genomes for annual screeners, and they charge between $20,000 to $60,000. And corporations are paying for these CEOs to do this, and it's not much different than what we're talking about here. In fact, they're using the standard old blood work. There's a lot of companies that market themselves as executive screeners for corporations. They charge $8,000 to $12,000. So we've tried to price this with a reasonable margin, as reasonable as we could, so that it's accessible to everybody, right? So now it's your turn to take advantage of that. So here's the link. Copy paste, click on open it now. It's there for you to take advantage. We just got started, so you'll be one of the first. Oh, there's a couple more questions. What do they do with the genetic data purchased? They look for ways to make personalized medication. They also have your personal data, so they can striate things ethnically, and they'll understand that different things work for different ethnic groups. They
They
also
will target you for marketing purposes. They will target your social media. They will make
Yep.
sure you see ads for things that they think you should want and purchase. The list is phenomenal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Advice for people that had their 23andMe data hacked.
Join the lawsuit? No, wrong
Yeah.
advice, sorry.
Very American of you.
Yeah. There probably will be a class action.
No, there is a class action already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's probably cross-border, and rightfully so.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be
Yeah.
international.
Yeah. How is the data given to us in a secure way? So you actually, what we ask you to do is when you receive, for example, the DNA 360 kit, as opposed to a doctor going or a nurse registering it, we actually let you do that. So you actually go open your account, enter the barcode, and then you're shipping us a tube with the barcode, and our lab doesn't know who it belongs to. It's a barcode, right? So this part is very important. So the model was designed in a way where you control your data, and you then have, through password protection, access to the results. And if you choose to work with a clinician, you provide them access for that time to be able to help you. Otherwise, you are accessing your results through a portal that you control through a password, right? Okay. So it's not a system that could be hacked into. I mean, we haven't been hacked, and we're not, it's, sorry, it looks like you're gonna
Everyone
say something.
with an internet connection, regardless of connected to what, can be a target. That's why you build an encryption wall in your router, and it constantly is changing your private IP addresses and your IP scheme internally. It's called network address translation. So that's one of the many things that we use to make sure that the servers are protected.
All right. Any other thoughts, guys? Any other questions? Oh, there's something.
Very welcome, Dirk.
Yeah.
And I want to see the video of you making Dr. Kosterman run. I'm ready for that.
I hope you just saw the salt in my eyes. Yeah.
Thank you, Elle, very much. Thank you all
Yeah.
for coming.
Yeah.
There, you will get the replay. The links will be in there. If you want more information, like Kashyap said, just reach out to us. If you want to work on a program, Brandon's email is in here. Reach out to Brandon. If you want to have a navigation call on results you've already had, and maybe you haven't had that, reach out to Brandon and he'll set that up for you. Kashyap, thank you very much. Dr.
Thank you,
Kosterman,
guys.
excellent job. Thank you both. Lovely to see both of you.
You too.
As
Okay,
well.
thanks everybody. Good night.
Good night, guys.